We are at the we're at the home of Dr. Marshall Jenkins. And Dr. Jenkins, what is the address here? It's 424
South Chillingworth Drive.
South Chillingworth Drive, West
Palm Beach, Florida, 33409.
Okay, and go ahead. Who's present? Dr. Jenkins is present. Myself, Carlton Cartwright, the Executive Director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated, and
Derek Johnson.
Okay. Number one. Right at the top.
You were drafted.
I have to speak loud.
Yeah. And what is your birthday, sir?
January 30th. I was born in 1926.
Where?
In Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay. Go ahead, Derek.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
You was
right out of high school.
Where were you living at the time?
In Hartford, Connecticut.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Yes, very vividly.
What did it feel like?
Well, it was strange because I was a young kid right out of high school, and I was inducted at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and a week later I was at Fort McClellan, Alabama.
That was your
training
camp?
That was for the first part of my experience was the infantry.
Tell me about boot camp training.
Well, it was very rigid and quite unusual for a young lad right out of high school. Our training was set up so that we could replace troops overseas and fight in the Army at that level. Yeah, but of course we were there for 17 weeks, and we were trained in the infantry to fight.
What was your rank when you separated, Doc?
I was a staff sergeant when we separated. I was in charge of what they call a platoon in the company that I was in. Yeah.
Do you remember your drill instructors? Do you remember your drill instructors?
No. This was many years ago.
How did you get through boot camp?
How did I get to boot camp? By train. We left.
No, how did you get through it? How did you get
through
it?
Oh, he asked how to get through it.
Yeah. How difficult was it? Tell us something about it.
Well, it was very difficult because I wasn't accustomed to that kind of rigid training of anything. I was a young kid out of high school. But I learned to like it because I had no alternative. I had to do it, and I did it. And after 17 weeks in Anniston, Alabama, which was in the deep South, you don't know very much about that. But Florida was the same at that time. So the South was a very horrible place for black people at that time. That has changed significantly, yes. Thanks to Martin Luther King and others, yes.
Which wars did you serve in?
World War II.
Where did you go exactly? Where did you go exactly?
Where did I go? What do you? I don't understand.
Okay. First of all, you said you were in Connecticut when you enlisted.
I was inducted in Connecticut. I was born and raised in Connecticut.
So, where did you go after that? How long did the induction take?
The induction only took a week.
Okay. So, where'd you go after that, Doc?
To Camp Swift, Texas.
And
Camp Swift, Texas. That's close to Austin, Texas.
was that basic training?
No, we finished basic 17 weeks of basic training. Then we were assigned to another camp, which was
Where did you do the 17 weeks?
at Fort McClellan, Alabama. That's what I just told him. yeah.
Okay, and then from Alabama, then you went to Texas.
Camp Swift, Texas, right?
Okay, and you were there for how long?
We were in Camp Swift for about 4 months, I would guess. I'm not positive about the time.
And tell us about your training there.
Well, what they did, they changed us from the infantry to driving trucks
Okay.
at Camp Swift. And that continued until we went overseas. And we went overseas, I was in Manila, Philippine Islands, for about a year or a little more. And there was a lot of action there because that's where MacArthur, General MacArthur, established his section of the war. The Philippines, of course, were destroyed by the Japanese, literally destroyed. The country, everything, but the United States moved in and we ran the Japanese out. And I was there until I got out of the Army.
Okay, now you say you were in Texas for 4 months. You said that they had switched your training. What were you originally supposed to be trained for?
To fight, man to man with rifles.
Okay.
But they moved us into the quartermasters, and we were assigned to drive trucks and take supplies to soldiers, and we did a lot of good things for the Philippine people, because their whole country had been destroyed. In fact, to the extent that people didn't have food. Whenever we ate, there were children with cups waiting for us to scrape our plates into their cups so that they could take it home and to eat. Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, we need to hear about, so your experience there. Go ahead, go on.
Where did you see any combat?
Directly, no. Indirectly, yes. I've been in many foxholes because the Japanese, although they were run out of Manila in the Philippine Islands, they continued to bomb. And so there were periods of time when our company had to jump into those places for their lives. I've seen soldiers get killed from driving the trucks into areas where the infantry was fighting. So soldiers I've seen that.
What is a foxhole?
A foxhole is a hole that you dig so that if you're bombed, you head towards that foxhole and you get in it the best way you can. The foxhole is large enough to accommodate, well, some of them can accommodate 3 or 4 or 5 people. Others may only be able to accommodate 1 person. But you dig your own foxhole wherever you go. That's the first thing you do, because part of your equipment is a shovel. And when you go to a new area, you decide where you're going to dig your foxhole. Now, you may dig it big enough for a friend, but most of the time you dig it for yourself. Yeah. So that's the way that works, and that still happens even today. Because in case of bombings, the only protection you have is the earth. That is, even buildings can't protect you because they can bomb a building. Yeah.
Tell me about your most memorable experiences.
Well, there are a number of experiences.
And before we do that, you skip and anyway, were there a lot of casualties in your unit or company?
There was some.
Okay.
I can remember the most vivid thing that I saw. That and I still remember this so vividly because the person involved, the two persons involved, were very close friends of mine at the time. We were taking supplies up north, what they call Louisiana County, and we had driven maybe 10, 15 miles, and it was the area where our soldiers were driving, and some had been there before, but I had not been there before. And the Japanese would leave mines, these are bombs, in part of the road. And as we approached one of the places, the truck in front of mine hit a landmine. And it just happened that in front of the area that the guy in front of me rolled over, there was a deep fall, drop. And he wasn't aware of it. No, none of us were aware of it. But he hit the landmine, and of course he and his partner were killed instantly. And I was in back of him, and of course I slammed on the brakes, and I saw his truck go down. And by the grace of God, mine did not, because I stopped before I got to the edge. Now I remember that so well because that was very traumatic. And so that was perhaps the worst experience that I can relate. Because I think about that even now, because I'd never seen a vehicle simply explode, and I was the next one. If it had not been him, it would have been me. Yeah.
Were you a prisoner of war?
No.
Thank God for that.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Not to the exception. I got an honorable discharge, and I was a staff sergeant, as I told you. But no, as it relates to the Army, no. My awards would come after that.
Did you have anything to do with battle planning, or?
No. A person at my level wouldn't be one who planned. The generals planned, and other people who were much higher than I was carried out the plan. But
You were in the Air Force?
no, I was in the quartermaster, infantry, and then quartermaster.
In the Army?
Yeah, Army.
Okay. Question is, what are the top level sergeants in the Air Force? It's Master Sergeant, Senior Master.
They go the same. The general is the top.
Well, where I'm going is in the enlisted, not in the NCOs. What is the highest NCO in the Army?
Probably a master sergeant.
Okay. Those upper level NCOs, did they ever have any? You're the first person I've asked this question. in that war, that the one that you were in, that you're familiar with,
Right.
did they ever call them in for advice on battle planning?
No, not
Okay.
that I know of.
All right.
You understand? You have to understand that
Officers
the
only.
Army was segregated,
Right.
and
Oh.
as soon as you left being inducted, blacks were over here, whites are over there,
Right.
and that stayed that way.
Uh-huh.
In fact, there was a general.
Yep.
I'm talking about,
It's okay. Sorry.
of course, you got to think of the fact that the Army was as racist as the South.
Uh-huh.
However, there were blacks who were beyond master sergeants, but what I'm saying is there were also generals and lieutenants and others, but they were not classified as I don't know what they were classified as, except that they were in charge many times of sections of the Army.
Right.
But I remember that we had a black lieutenant who was in charge of our company until we went overseas. And we were very upset because when we went overseas, they moved him and gave us a white person in charge.
Right.
Although the whole unit was black.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you see, the United States of America has changed dramatically in my lifetime.
I understand.
Not the most dramatic thing was, in terms of wanting to see it happen, was our president. I'm thankful to God that I lived long enough to see a black president in the United States. And that's why we've got to keep it. Got to keep him. Got to keep him. And the reason we have to keep him is for young people like this, who now know that they can become president. When I was your age, the thought of that was just an impossible thought. So the country's changed, and it's for the better, because desegregation helped everybody: whites, blacks, Hispanics, everybody.
Go ahead,
But
man.
I talk about
sorry. Go on, Doc.
this in my book, my experience in the Army.
What is the name of your book, sir?
Intellectually persecuted.
Okay.
Intellectually persecuted. And you're going to see a lot of this. But here I am, a young black kid, just like this kid right here, who had never been south in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'd read about it. My grandmother and my mother have told me about things that had happened, the lynchings, and but it was a different thing. And all of a sudden, here I am, inducted in Massachusetts, and a week later, I'm in Fort McClellan, Alabama. And that was an experience that no one should have to have, because you don't know the rules.
Uh-huh.
You know it's so, but you don't know what the rules are. In Connecticut, sure, a lot was racist in Connecticut, but in high school I played basketball, I played baseball, I did a lot of boxing with whites, blacks, whoever. There was no question. And here I am in a place where after 6 o'clock you can't even walk on the same side of the street downtown where whites walk. And that was extremely difficult for me. And anyway, I captured it in my book because I used expression. Here I am being trained in the infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know anything except white folks must be my enemy because they treat me so badly. And I couldn't figure that out as a young kid. And my mother, who used to write me letters, and she'd say, well, just be careful, live with it, don't get in any trouble, don't you know. Well, mothers do that, but yet that doesn't answer the problem. So.
Right. I understand.
So anyway, I just thank God for leading me out of that. Now the other thing, I had never been on a black college campus, but I had an opportunity to visit a black college in Alabama because fortunately there was a guy in my outfit who lived in Talladega.
Uh-huh.
And he got a pass to go home, and he asked me if I wanted to go. And I went on this black college campus, Talladega. You've heard of Talladega College.
Oh, yeah.
And I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed. Here I am, for the first time, on a black college campus where there's nothing but black kids. And there were a few male black kids because most of the males had been drafted. And I was just in awe. I couldn't believe this. That was the highlight of my experience in Alabama. And I can't forget it because, and I write it in my book. In fact, I dedicated my book to family and formerly all black colleges.
Okay.
So. And I'm doing a letter to all black college presidents and referencing my book. So that was me in Alabama. So
Was that before or after the service?
I was in the service.
Okay.
Yeah, I was deeply in the service.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
You know-
Did you sustain any injuries at all while you were in the military?
Not caused by the Army, no. You know, one thing I left out here. I was at. Did I mention Camp Swift?
You mentioned it, but you didn't.
Camp Swift was in Texas.
Right.
That's where I went from Texas to overseas.
Okay.
So I was at Camp Swift for a short while, and I had some experiences there that I cite in my book.
Okay. While you were in the military, exactly.
All this was in the
what
military.
happened? What
Yeah.
happened?
Well, Camp Swift was the place where we planned to move out to go to California and then overseas.
Right.
And I've forgotten how long we were at Camp Swift, but it wasn't a long time. It was just we were there for the purpose of getting ready to go overseas.
Okay.
When a company goes on alert, nobody can leave the campus.
Right.
It's not a campus, it's a camp.
Right.
We went on alert, and I knew nobody was supposed to go anyplace. But I had left my watch in a shop, and I was determined to get my watch in this place called Bastrop, Texas, a little town where country is not, that doesn't even describe it. But anyway, I had a friend who, his job was to drive into Bastrop to pick up mail every day. And I learned that he was going to go into Bastrop one more time. So I told him I got a watchman in whatever the name of the store was. And could I ride in with him? And he was brave enough to take me, right? He took me to the store, and what happened, I was blindsided by somebody who knocked me cold. And it was when I was returning, because I got my watch, so the person wasn't looking for the watch. And I was in the hospital a week. Now my company left, and because in the Army they don't wait for anybody. And so I was in the hospital a week, and I described that in the book. And then when I got out of the hospital, it took me back to my company. And then I went overseas, and after a month or two, I was connected with my company again. Yeah.
Right.
So that was the only injury. In fact, I still have a scar on my head.
Okay.
that happened that night.
Uh-huh.
And nobody seemed to know anything. And they did an investigation, and I have almost quoted what the store owner said. He said, "The nigga did come in my store, but I didn't see anybody hit him." You know, that's exactly what he said. So I quoted it in my book. That's what he said.
Okay.
So, and then from the Philippine Islands, the war ended when I was in the Philippine Islands, and
Okay.
and
That was in 45, wasn't it? I believe.
I believe it's something like that.
Okay.
I almost forgot Camp Swift.
So you said you've been in service, what, for 3 years?
About not quite. Well, it was about 2.5. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just helping you fine tune the dates, which is, so you went in after 42, maybe like 43, and you were there when the war ended, somewhere, some month in 45.
Yeah, whenever it ended. This
Okay.
letter would indicate that.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Derek.
How did you stay in touch with the family?
By letter.
By letter?
Yeah, we could write, and by the time you leave one post and go to another, I usually had a lot of mail, and everybody would form on the outside, and somebody would call the mail. Marshall Jenkins, Sam Jones, that kind of thing, and that's how it was. Yeah,
Mail call.
yeah, mail call. That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
What was the food like while you were in service?
Well, you get accustomed to it. Now, there was a rule that was pretty consistent. You get all you want to eat, but you have to eat it all. You can't take anything with you. That was the general rule. And if you took something out, then they put you on duty to wash dishes, and that's a big job. When you're assigned to wash dishes, you never realize how many dishes exist until you have that assignment. And almost everybody gets that assignment for things that they should told not to do. For example, if you do back from leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, when every morning at 6 o'clock, the whole company has to line up with your rifle and everything and snap to attention and all that. But if you are late, you get KP, that's what it is, for a week. You wash dishes for a week. Fortunately, later in the situation, I was a staff sergeant, so I was in charge of what they call a platoon. And I was the one who assigned KP to my platoon if they were late, because they had to be there and they had to be at attention when it was called. So the Army is very rigid. But you learn. I still think of some of the things that I learned about being in the Army. Like being on time, getting your work done on time, doing all your readings that you have to do on time, snapping to attention when you're told to, and all that. So you're not accustomed to that kind of life anyplace else except the armed services. Yeah.
Extremely disciplined.
Yes, so much so. But it helps. It helps me even now. If I have an appointment I wouldn't be late unless something traumatic happens. I'm going to be there on time, that's for sure. Now, my wife may not be there on time, but I'm going to be there on time because that's part of my training. And for the last couple of months, I've been under the weather in terms of my blood pressure has been fluctuating. And, I find myself, I do a lot of walking. I used to, at least before this happened. And sometimes I find myself walking, bending over, and I say to myself, snap it up! Move out, soldier! That kind of thing. So there's some positive things that happen.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
Yeah, we had plenty of supplies, yeah. Primarily because I was in an outfit that supplied supplies to those who were on the front line. So we always had supplies.
Did you feel any pressure or stress?
In the beginning, yeah. Yeah, it was very difficult to get used to the rules and regulations. Very difficult. Even when I think about it now, and it's reflected in my book, it's extremely difficult to get used to all of the regulations. Like in Texas one night, there are two black colleges in Austin, and of course I spent a lot of time with on that campus because girls, you understand that. And you had to take a bus, an army bus actually, from that point back to camp. And one night, I missed the last bus going into camp. So I sat there in a desolated area and waited. Finally, a bus drove up. And I got ready to step on the bus. The driver said, "I'm sorry, soldier, but you can't get on this bus." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because we don't allow any black people on this bus." Now, this was an army bus. So I had to sit all night long until a bus that would take a black person back to camp. Well, when I got back to camp, it was 8 o'clock or something like that. That was no excuse. That was no excuse. And so they put me on KP for a whole week. See, so that's the kind of thing that drives me to write the kind of book that I wrote, because I was not happy with situations like that and many others. But that was God's truth. Yeah. So.
Was there anything you did? Was there anything special you did that for good luck?
I don't understand that question.
It's a question that's in the script. I mean, you don't want to answer it. It's no big deal. They want to know if there was anything that you did for good luck while you're in service, like you need, some. It can be a spiritual question. Did you?
Oh, no, I prayed a lot.
There you go.
Like I do today.
There you go.
That's about it. But that's not luck.
Right.
No, you've got to take God with you. If you don't, you're all alone out there, man. And it's tough out there, let me tell you. There's some crazy people out there. So, no. Other than pray a lot. And just ask God for the things that God will give you. Because He's in a position to do far more for you than you're able to do for yourself. And if it's a positive thing, He usually answers in one way or another, just by doing it. Yeah.
Did any entertainment come and visit the base?
Yeah, in Texas, we had some groups to come. I don't know who arranged them, but and there were some even I can remember only one dance where there were a lot of Filipino women. Well, this happened in the Philippines, but in Texas, there were just, I guess they were students. I don't know. But in the Philippines, they did it once, but the war was over. Before the war ended, you wouldn't have any of that.
Oh, okay.
At least we didn't have any. I don't know about anybody else.
As far as you traveling, you called out, I believe, all the places you traveled. You were in Alabama, you were in Texas, started out in Connecticut, you wound up in the Philippines. When you got your leave time,
Right.
okay, where did you go? Did you travel to Asia? Did you go back home?
Well, no, I had left home because Connecticut is home. I never got back there until the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
But in some places, nobody really wanted leave time. Like in Bastrop, Texas, it was just a terrible place, and you'd rather stay in camp and play cards, you know. But in Alabama, I can remember some of us accepting passes. The camp was 17 weeks, and they may have given us weekend passes twice. And I didn't go anyplace, and most of my friends didn't go anyplace, because Alabama was just a horrible place. I mean, to snap of a finger, you could be in serious trouble. And so I said, no, I'd rather stay on campus and play cards or do it. So now, when I went to the college in Alabama, now that was nice. That was nice. But I can't remember any other time leaving that campus for the weekend. Yeah. But then I was with a guy his home was there.
Right.
And that was nice because his mama turned it on, boy. We had some good food, man. Yeah. So, actually, that was a nice day. That was a nice day. But it was only a day.
Yeah. What about in the Philippines? Did you travel around there?
No.
No.
The Philippines, the Army, after the war, provided some entertainment. During the war, there was just nothing. Because, I mean, you were turning around looking behind you all the time. Because it was hard to sometimes determine the enemy, the Japanese, or the Filipino. You know, they look very, especially in the evening. In fact, one time, Japanese that were out in the woods or the mountains or whatever joined our child line once. Yeah, and it wasn't discovered really until the child was over. Except they may have arrested 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
But they were in the child. The child line was outside, you know, and it must have been evening because I couldn't tell the difference, and I don't think any of those people in my line could tell the difference.
Right.
And they had plates, and whoever was serving would throw that food on that plate.
And that was it.
Yeah. So, no, I didn't.
That was undercover out in the open, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to think what the mountains were called. I've forgotten the name of it now. Where we would go up in those mountains, and I mean, soldiers would fight, and then come back and eat.
Right.
So. But all we had to do, my company had to just provide supplies to those who were on the front line. Yeah.
Derek, pick it up with recalling the days the service ended.
Do you recall the days? Do you recall the day your service ended?
Can't hear you.
The last days of service. What was that like? When you knew you were getting ready to get out?
Oh, that was joyous. In fact, we had a baseball team, and all I did was play first base every day. We had a regular schedule, just like the pros. And in fact, there was 2 of the guys from the black Army, I mean what am I trying to say? Two of the professional black players, baseball players, were in our outfit.
Oh, okay.
And one of them played first base for the Black Yankees.
Uh-huh.
And he was much older, and so I played first base in the community, in high school and whatnot. And he showed me how to play it. And so he just did more coaching than playing, and I did the playing.
Right.
Yeah, that was nice. And that happened. God, I don't know how many weeks it was before we actually left to come home. But that was fun, man. So, and when I got home, I rejoined the team that I was on, and man, I could play some first base, man.
Okay.
Oh man. But he was the one who taught me. Yeah.
So where did you separate? Where were you when you separated?
We separated in. We came from Manila back to San Francisco, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were assigned trains that came all the way back to New York and Connecticut.
Right.
So we were on the ocean. The ship was on the ocean an entire month.
From Manila to San Francisco?
That's right. Going and coming. Yeah. Yeah. 30 days, man. And only once do I recall when we got into the waters that Japan and the United States were sharing, I guess. There was an alert, and all soldiers had to go below, and the sailors took over.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so, man, we were in that little hole playing blackjack, man. Yeah. But coming back, I felt more at ease because the war was over.
Right.
And 30 days seemed like a very long time, because you're going to see family for the first time in a long time. And,
right.
And that was really touching, but it worked. Yeah. I have two brothers who were in the service at the same time, the three of us. You know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 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 And we never got home the same time, except for I got home one time on furlough with one of my other brothers, my oldest brother.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he has passed. Yeah. So that was my experience. But I have to reference something in my book, though.
Okay. Yeah, we have about 4 or 5 more questions, and we'll be done.
Okay. This is in my book. I wrote an entire chapter on. I call it a military nightmare.
Okay.
The United States entered World War II in 1940. Soon thereafter, the United States Congress passed the draft law, which mandated that all males who were 18 years or older must register for the draft. No male who met this criterion had an opinion. Failure to register would result in incarceration. Those who registered early were allowed to select their branch of service. Others were assigned to the Army. I entered the United States Army during World War II at Fort Devens, Massachusetts on April 21st, 1944, and served until May 46. As I was going through the induction procedure, I thought it was strange that I was assigned to travel by train from Hartford, Connecticut to Fort Devens. Anyway, I'm going to skip. As an American, I knew that I was supposed to love my country and be willing to fight to protect it. However, sending an 18-year-old black boy from Connecticut who had never been south to Fort McClellan at Anniston in Alabama in 1943. This was not an induction that my country. This was not an indication that my country loved me at all. I say this because no orientation of any kind was provided, and no guidance as to how I should conduct myself, let alone know what to expect. I felt as if I was taking a long solo journey to nowhere. I did not feel comfortable. There I was, a black boy from the North who had attended school with white students all his life and had participated in sports with white boys on basketball courts and baseball fields. I had even participated on teams and competed against white boys in track. Now I was in a God-forsaken place where black people had to sit in the back of the bus. Keep in mind, this was America in 1943. During this period, a black person could not even walk on the same side of the street that a white person was on if it was past 6 p.m. Wearing an army uniform made no difference. As I deliberated my predicament at that time, I realized that I was placed in a very vulnerable position. I could have been lynched in the same manner of Emmett Till, who was lynched in Money, Mississippi in 1955. Till, a 14-year-old black boy from Chicago, was on his way to visit relatives in this tiny cotton gin town located on the eastern edge of the Mississippi Delta. He had no knowledge of Jim Crow laws in the South or what segregation and racism meant, and not much of anything else. I believe that only divine intervention got me through the experience of 19 weeks at the Army Infantry Replacement Training Center in Anniston, Alabama. There's a lot more to it, but
I'm sure.
I wanted to make a point, and I hope that never happens to a black kid in America ever. Because boy, that was traumatic. That was traumatic. So I know you heard of Emmett Till.
Yes, I have.
You have? Okay. He was killed uselessly only because he decided to disagree with the cashier, who was also a young girl, white girl, and he disagreed with her. And he was from Chicago, and he went to visit his grandmother in Mississippi. And because of that confrontation, they went to his grandmother's house that night and got him and lynched him. Now that's what happened to Emmett Till. And, of course, that's just... Where are you from originally?
New York.
You're from New York? Okay. My book begins... My folks were originally from Georgia. And on a particular day, a celebration, my grandmother took her 7 children. My mother at that time was 8 years old. Took her 7 children to a parade. And the parade went well, except they had lynched the black man. This is in Americus, Georgia. And they drugged that black man through the street, dead, as part of the parade. That's how my book opens. And it was at that point that my grandmother decided that she was going to leave. And she, several months later, she packed up everything and ended up in Hartford, Connecticut. And that's where I was born. Yeah. So that's the beginning of my book.
Right.
Man. So anyway, black people have had a very difficult time in this country. And I also have in that book that I wondered who the enemy was. Here I am, can't walk on the same side of the street as a white person. I'm being trained to kill Japanese. It's crazy.
A little confusing, Doc?
Yeah, really, really, really. So anyway, but my book is not only about that. I've had a lot of successful experiences doing a lot of things. So, but anyway.
So the next part, where we at? Let's see now. So what did you do when you got out of the service? Did you go back to school?
I went to school.
The days
yeah.
immediately after the service, what did you do?
I went to college. I used the GI Bill.
Okay.
And I went to Florida A&M. The interesting thing is, my mother couldn't understand it because I used to write her and tell her how terrible the South was. And then when I decided to go to school, I selected Florida A&M.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "You are going back to the South?" And I explained that why I wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Florida A&M, and that was the best experience of my life. The very best, very best.
What's the next one, Derek?
Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
Did I do what?
Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
Oh yes, but they didn't last through the years. Yeah, I made many friends. Yeah, some I used to communicate with, but most of them are dead because very few people live as long as I've lived. Very few. White, black, Hispanic, doesn't matter. When you get to be 86 and can converse, that's very unusual, I'm telling you. So. Did
you join any veterans organizations?
I was a member of the veterans place here, and that's about it. Now we had some veteran activities, primarily in Connecticut, but I wasn't really active. I was trying to get an education and do the things I wanted to do. Yeah, so. But I wrote this book because any black man in leadership, and I had some real significant jobs, will have a hard time sometime. And sometimes it's his own psychological thought or thinking, and other times it's people who are just outright racist.
Right.
Like the first job that I worked when well, let me back up. My first teaching job was at the University of Connecticut, at Florida A&M University High School, and then I became a teaching principal in one of the country schools in Florida. And I wanted to come back to Florida because I had really fallen in love with my first wife, who was at Florida A&M. So when I had an incident that I explained in my book, this was, of course, all schools were black, all white. And I was principal of this school out in the country. Mm-hmm. And it was a elementary and junior high school combination. Only had 13 teachers, so you know. But we didn't have a freezer. And my home economics teacher, every day she had to go shopping and buy the foods and then prepare for lunch. Well, her husband became ill, and she couldn't do that any longer. So I went to the superintendent and asked if they would purchase a freezer so that this woman wouldn't have to do this. He said no. So what we did, I called my little PTA together, and we raised the money. The name of the school was Lake McBride Junior High School.
Okay.
So we had a Miss Lake McBride contest, and we raised the money for the freezer. The chairman and I went to Sears and bought a freezer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't a big freezer, but it would have served, right?
Served the purpose.
Before Sears could ship the thing out, the superintendent, who's white, incidentally, called me and told me he'd like to see me. Be in my office at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I was there. When I got there, he had my whole thing on his desk. My application, everything.
Your record?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said to me, "You're from Connecticut, aren't you?" Now, I'm standing at his desk before I sat down, I said, "You got everything on my desk, on your desk. You know I'm from Connecticut." He said, "You can't get used to our ways, can you?" And he said, "Marshall, you can't get used to our way." And because, in the South, when they said Marshall, and you had to call him Mr. Man, like I told my wife finally when I got home, I said, "Boy, I almost slapped that white man, boy." Anyway, he said, "I can't permit you to buy it. We don't have any money." I said, "It's not going to cost the county a dime. All you have to do is to tell the man to ship it out there." He said, "No." So anyway, in the course of the conversation, he said to me, "I'm not sending a refrigerator there today, tomorrow, next week." He was, Well, when I got home, I was furious. Oh man. So it was April, I think, then.
Uh-huh.
And I said to my wife was from Tallahassee.
Okay.
See, I said to my wife, "Look, this is it. We moving. We going."
Get out of there.
I said, because I almost got in a whole lot of trouble, boy. So anyway, at the end of the school year, and the school year ended in May, I took my little 2 rooms of furniture and my 2 children that I had at that time, who were my oldest now today, and I drove to Connecticut and moved in with my mother. Now my mother was living on the 3rd floor, but we got a lot of help, and we moved us, and I started looking for a job almost the next day. And the only thing I could find, I think of this now, and I even get ticked off even right now, even thinking about that. I worked in a grocery store, packing groceries.
Right.
And this was in Connecticut now, in the town, the community I thought was had liberated themselves.
Right.
And I wore a shirt, short sleeve shirt, one day, and a white lady was in there with her little boy. And the little boy said, "Mommy, his arms are black. Are his legs black?" And I heard that. And I said, "That's right. I got black arms, I got black legs, and I'm black all over." And, and I said it very loud. And they didn't fire me, but they were thinking about firing me. Yeah. So, anyway, I was looking for a job, because at that point I had my degree. I had a master's degree, and I was certified as a school administrator. Mm-hmm. So then I looked, and finally, I guess I visited about there's 64 towns in Connecticut, and I think I visited almost all of them looking for a job, and I got one. I got a teaching job in Lebanon, Connecticut. And in Lebanon, this was an all-white school, and man, I worked. I mean, I don't know how many students we had at that time, but they all knew me. I knew every parent. I knew everybody.
Uh-huh.
So I taught, and as it happened, the person who was the principal resigned the next year,
Uh-huh.
and I had no idea that I was going to get the principalship. But I had done everything. I mean, everything that was significant to them.
Right.
I coached basketball. I coached baseball. I directed the senior play. My wife and I took the senior class to Washington. We did it all, man. And so, my wife, that summer, after that principal resigned, I didn't even apply because I didn't think it was going to happen.
Right.
I was sitting in class at the University of Connecticut, and they paged me and said the chairman of the board wants me to call him, and I called him, and he wanted me to apply for the job, and sure enough, I applied for it, and I became principal. I was the first black high school principal in the state of Connecticut.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I was principal there for 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then a whole lot of other stuff happens that you have to read my book.
I got you.
It was a great experience. In fact, they brought me out there since I've been living here to honor me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can move this along. You answered okay, and we did that. And did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Yeah, I thought a lot about it. Thought about how stupid war is. Really is. And I understand from a practical point that as a last resort, sometimes you have to do that. But I'm not sure that all of the wars that we fought were really absolutely necessary in terms of the lives that were lost. That's why it bothers me when I hear some of these candidates talk about, we've got to stop this, we've got to stop that. Short of war, yeah, stop it, but not war. Because we're talking about middle-class people and lower middle-class people, the ones who are dying in large numbers at wars. So, anyway, that's my feeling. You know, some people don't feel that way. But
Derek, pick the next one up.
Do you attend any reunions?
No, we did that. You're in the wrong place.
and you have to
Okay.
see, my ears are not as good as yours.
Oh, I got you. You did see it, but I asked about I'm sorry. You were right. Have you attended any reunions, military reunions?
No.
Okay. All right, now the next one. Go ahead, Derek.
How
Go ahead.
how did your service and experience affect your life?
I think it helped me to understand that discipline is very important in life, because discipline relates to how you think and how you act. And if people who get into trouble would think first, they would act differently. Yeah.
Last question.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the interview that we have not covered in questions?
No, I think you've covered most of it, and of course I've added a lot to it, because
Which is fine. Thank you.
my perception of everything that I've done has always been in the interest of young people, because I think young people are really our only hope. And so if they can understand that they can provide leadership without anger, without corruption, without a lot of things, that most of us would be much better off. And so the Army taught me that, you know. Because as a kid, well, like most kids, you know, who would have known if I had stayed in the streets of Hartford, Connecticut? I don't think I would be sitting here. I really don't. But the training that I got in the Army helped me realize that I have to decipher, I have to differentiate, and make wise decisions. And that's what I tell my children. You know, I tell them all the time, make wise decisions, and that has helped. Yeah. Don't let people make decisions for you, because they'll lead you wrong, man. Yeah.
Go ahead. Finish.
Thank you for sharing your recollections of the.
Well, that's all right.
of the
That's
war.
all right. I'm happy to do it. I didn't realize that I knew this gentleman. I've known him in many years. I knew the name was familiar, but I just couldn't recall. And I've been a lot of places, and I'm sure he has. So it's been a delight, gentlemen.
Thank you, Doc.
Mm-hmm.